Hello, this is Jeff Barton from Scoresheet Sports. We're going to, after about a 3 year absence, resurrect our Scoresheet podcasts. I'm happy to say that as our very first guest of these new podcasts, we have Todd Zola. Todd has been with mastersball.com for a little over 20 years now, which is a great fantasy baseball site. And I hear that just last night he was named Fantasy Baseball Writer of the Year by the Fantasy Sports Writers Trade Association, which is the biggest deal there is among fantasy writers. So congratulations, Todd.
Thank you, sir. It's man, 3 years kind of flown by, huh? Seems like just 3 years ago we were doing this.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like watching your kids grow up. Time goes fast. But yeah, you didn't have that prestigious award 3 years ago, so now I'm really kind of honored to be talking to you.
Yeah, well, listen, I'd like to say that we're, just doing my job, and I was, but it's also nice to get recognized and get out of the vacuum. And you know what? As cool as the award is, and it is, the sort of the recognition and the response of the industry and friends has just been overwhelming. So I think it's a ploy to make me stop. I haven't been able to work for the past 12 hours, and I think it's just a ploy of everybody to get me behind on winning the award next year because now I'm late filing all my stuff. So
Well, yeah, you've actually won, though. I mean, this is your first writer award, I guess, but Todd over the years has, I believe, won more expert rotisserie leagues titles and top three finishes than anybody else I know of.
well,
So,
then let's be on. I mean, I want to be honest about that. I haven't. There have been people. I've won a couple, but there are people that have got a much better record than I have than I do. So I would I'll be upfront about that. Tristan Cockcroft, Larry Schechter. There's a number of people out there, and forgetting just to name two. There are a number of people out there. Listen, I've won a couple. I've done some stuff in the NFBC. I've competed. I've also come in last place. But to be honest, as I like playing the game is one thing, being good at playing, and this is actually an argument that's been going on Twitter and social media, is does your expert have to be good at the game? And I'm just as happy to be recognized for my writing as I am for my playing. I think my playing is good enough that the writing's credible. So I kind of I felt just as good last night getting all the recognition than when I won Tout Wars and Labor a couple years ago. I mean, so it's kind of cool. I think the writing is just as important as being able to play well.
right. Well, and part of winning a league is how much time you put into that league. So, I know these
Sure.
expert leagues, once in a while, they'll get an average Joe to play that's not even in the industry. And it's amazing how well they always do because they make it, their main fantasy goal of the year to do well in the one expert league they've ever been in. Other guys like you are in a bunch of leagues, and, how much time can you put in every league because you have a job writing projections and analysis and things.
Well, you still, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've lost because I haven't put the time in. It's part of what part of what I need to do. I mean, I need to be respectful of my customers on Sunday and my, the sites I write for on Sunday when I have to do my moves. But, I am representing myself, representing the site and representing the industry. You don't want to be known as the guy that gave up on his team or whatever. So, but maybe, maybe I say that and yet there is a guy out there grinding, like you're saying, that, he wants to point scoreboard over Zola or whatever. Maybe he's grinding just that much harder because that's what I like to, as hard as you think you're working, there's usually somebody working just as hard, if not harder than you. So maybe that is the case. I don't know. But I'm not going to make excuses that I'm not going to make excuses. I lose because I didn't put the time in. If someone beat me, they had a better year.
Yeah, well, there's some of that too. But one nice thing about Todd is that, unlike a lot of sites, Todd plays score sheet, and so while he of
Yeah.
course gives rotisserie advice, yeah, if you're a subscriber to mastersball.com, as long as you when you ask a question of Todd, because one thing about the nice thing about Masters Ball is he'll actually respond to questions in a very timely manner. If you mention you're a score sheet guy, then he won't be telling you to draft Billy Hamilton in the steals category because he understands how score sheet works. He'll tell you to draft a guy that gets on base or hits with power, but yeah, Billy Hamilton is not a third round pick in score sheet. He understands that. Same with pitcher wins. Pitcher wins in real life don't really matter in score sheet. It's ERA and WHIP, and Todd understands that and won't tell you to draft a guy just because he's on the Yankees and might get some cheap wins. So speaking of players and analysis and all, I'll ask a personal question. I've got Gio Gonzalez, and I'm debating whether to keep him in a 10-keeper NL because I've got other guys like Archie Bradley and Michael Wacha and Drew Pomeranz that I could keep instead. Pomeranz is a problem because he's an American League player now. But what do you think of Gio? He's like, 32 years old, I think?
Now, is this a score sheet team or is this a roto team?
No, score sheet. I only play score sheet.
Yeah. Well, I know you used to play a little roto.
Well,
see, Gio's one of those guys that has some, that word regression. Regression is coming. He's not a 2.9 ERA guy. Well, the thing is, he's not a 4.5 ERA guy either. I think the landing spot's going to be pretty softly for Gio. And in a 10-team score sheet league, 10-team NL, I mean, I got to believe he's a top 3 starter in your rotation. He's still going to pitch. I know, forget the wins in Washington. He's still going to pitch to a 3.8 ERA, which in score sheet's pretty darn good if the league average is over 4. So, I mean, you may have somebody better, but if I'm running a score sheet and if I've got, if he's my third pitcher, I'm probably pretty happy. If he's my first or second, I'm trying to improve my staff. But if he's my third pitcher in score sheet, I got no issues with that.
I mean, yeah, he actually would be my third because I have Strasburg and Carlos Martinez.
There you go.
So, we have 10 teams and we each keep 10 players. So that's 100 players. I mean, he's got to be in the top 100 in the National League, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in score sheet, like you said, because some of the other things you don't have to worry about as much. So yeah, I think so. And as opposed to in a rotisserie league where you can bully hitting and manage pitching, you need pitchers in score sheet. You need pitchers, so you can always platoon together. So if you're keeping 10, you keep 3 or 4 pitchers, or 5 or 6 or 7 hitters. That means you still have 3 or 4 hitting spots open, but you can platoon a couple of them, right? You can platoon your outfield. So you don't need to draft a starter. You could just as easily put together a nice little platoon to take care of a couple. And those are the guys that are available. No one keeps a platoon player, as one of their 10 keepers. So those will always be available in the draft. So I definitely would keep a Gio Gonzalez as especially with if it's 10 keepers. I think it for sure, because you're probably not keeping. You may keep a Kenley Jansen, but I don't know if you're going to be keeping all that many relievers, because I think you want to make sure you have your hitting pretty good, because there's always, we'll mention a couple. There's always, you mentioned you don't need wins. You don't need saves out of your closer. Well, I mean, score sheet. I mean, you don't need a closer in MLB to be your closer in score sheet.
No, I had Archie Bradley on my team last year.
Right.
That was, 1.9 ERA, 70-some innings. That was fantastic.
Right.
And like you said about platooning, like the Giants signing Austin Jackson, in rotisserie, he's going to get maybe 200 at bats if he's just starting against lefties and pinch hitting once in a while. So in rotisserie, you can't play him all the time, but in a daily game, I guess you can move him in and out, but in a weekly game, you really can't use him.
Right.
But in score sheet, where we have platoon lineups, I could do what the Giants are doing. I could list them as a starter versus left-handed pitchers, and then I could draft some center fielder that bats left-handed, but may not get drafted that high because he's not really a full-time player, and use him. And then you're right, you can take a couple positions in score sheet and draft a couple guys in the 18th or 19th round and platoon them and get one good player out of it.
You take Jock Peterson or someone like him, yeah. Although you're a Giants guy, you may not.
Yeah, it's very hard. I mean, I'll draft Kershaw maybe, but yeah, the Dodger thing. In our league, you at the draft, if you draft a Dodger, you have to do a shot of some lousy bourbon as a penalty.
All right, but that's the idea, though.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Jackson, you can put him in as a defensive replacement too in score sheet if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So you could very easily, he's a useful NL only rotisserie because it's such a deep league. But yeah, exactly, in score sheet, and the rosters are plenty big enough that you can carry it, even in in a larger four or more shallow. If you're in a mixed league and score sheet, whatever, there's the rosters are definitely large enough that you can carry a guy like Jackson or someone to that effect and make good use of them.
Yeah. Platooning's kind of dying out a little in real life because these teams are carrying so many pitchers they can't afford to platoon. I mean, you can have a fourth outfielder in the majors, but they're just not much platooning because they're carrying so many pitchers.
Yes, or what they're doing is they just don't have utility. I mean, they don't have they're doing platooning, but they don't have that outfielder that just doesn't play. So that's the other. I mean, there are still several, especially in the outfield. There's still a lot of platoons. I think there are as many as there always have been, but there's just that there's maybe not a your fifth outfielder is also an infielder kind of guy like that can play both infield and outfield. Chris Owings, somebody like that. So you're still platooning. I mean, all right. So maybe you don't take Jock Peterson, but maybe you take David Peralta. How about that? You rather have Peralta on your team from Arizona? So pair up Peralta and Austin Jackson.
Yeah, I'm actually a pretty big Peralta fan, but
yeah,
what do I know? And then I guess since it is the pre-2018 year, we got to talk a little about Mr. Ohtani. I get people still saying that in an American League keeper league, he's going to be the first pick after the keepers. So most of our leagues keep 13 players, so really it's round 14 is our first round of drafting. Of course, then Stanton got traded to the Yankees. So there isn't even 1% of your mind that would take Ohtani over Stanton, is there?
In score sheet, in a keep forever league, and I don't see. To me, the hardest thing to do in score sheet is to find good pitching, because it's either it's drafted young or when you just can't trade it. You just to find an ace. So if I have a weak team, and if I'm not very good this year, I might take Ohtani because he's going to be my ace in 2 or 3 years. If I'm trying to win this year, I'm probably taking Stanton. So
really,
I can make it. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I'm still. I mean, the BP Kings League, the baseball prospectus, one of their leagues in the score sheet. I'm still trying to find pitching. I just can't. I got all the hitting in the world, but my pitching's terrible. No one's going to trade it, and I take chances on guys that I hope develop, and it takes forever for a rookie to develop. So I mean, I've just been struggling because I can't get my hands on pitching, and so if I had an opportunity, I might. I wouldn't do it in Roto, but in score sheet I might because, I think inherent in this question is what I think intrinsically. What do I think Ohtani's going to do? I've written about this. First, I don't think he's going to throw more than 120, 130 innings this year. Maybe 140. I'm on the light side of people in the industry. The guy pitched 25 innings last year, and he's still rehabbing an ankle. But people are out there drafting him in rotisserie like he's going to throw 190, 200 innings. I just don't see it happening. I think he's got the skills of a Jacob deGrom right now. I don't think he's going to throw the innings, but that's kind of the guy I see. I think in 2 or 3 years, we could be talking about a Noah Syndergaard, Chris Sale type guy, as far as skills go. But, the key this year, you're only going to get, I say only, it's 130 innings, it's still 130 innings. But, if you, so you change it around. If Chris Sale were available, would I draft him over Giancarlo Stanton? Well, I mean, obviously, other than the age, I probably would. So
I guess that's the difference because in rotisserie, you're still probably taking Stanton over virtually anybody, any pitcher.
Well, yes, probably, yeah. Maybe although, maybe the Scherzer, the Klubers, the Sales, and the Kershaws, they're all in the same range, and it's more of a team philosophy,
right,
how you want to build your team. Because the delta between those 4 pitchers and the rest is just huge. So rotisserie, you can make an argument, and maybe Stanton may not be the, because you got that the whole injury thing with Stanton. If you what if Mike Trout were traded, and you're now talking about Trout, obviously you're taking the Trout. But if you promise me Stanton's healthy, that's a different story. That's one of there is that caveat there with Stanton.
Right, and probably, unless you've traded for the first pick, but if you're drafting first because you came in last year, then you're probably not going to turn it around this year. Though Stan's at least young. But sounds like you're pretty bullish on Ohtani 2 years, 3 years down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't talk. I know that we talked a little offline that you guys aren't going to be having Otani hit, which I think is a smart move just for the programming and just let's see what happens this year. And if it turns out you guys have to make the effort, then you'll make the effort. But I think it's smart right now to play it safe, just make sure things go smoothly and have him pitch. I don't think he's. I mean, right now my comp for hitting, and I say this, and it's misleading because of the bad year last year. But think Sean Rodriguez a couple years ago. It's not a bad hitter. He's just not that great. 200 at bats of 13, 15 homers and a 240 average. Sean Rodriguez is a useful player, and that's kind of where I see Otani. And I think people are expecting him to, not only win the Cy Young but also win the Triple Crown, and that's just not going to happen.
No, I mean, and really, I don't mean this as a racist comment in the slightest, but there's a reason Babe Ruth was the last guy to really be a successful two-way player, and it's been 90 years. I mean, it's possible Otani is the next Babe Ruth, but odds are against, I think, him or anybody else doing it. There's just a reason no one's done it for 90 years.
Yeah. Now the other thing, I mean, alluded to before, he's rehabbing from an ankle. I'm not even talking about the injury possibility because he's using two different sets of muscles and everything else. But as a batter, you're going to get by a pitch. You're going to, Mike Trout lost time because he slid into second base. You're exposing Noah Syndergaard, Chris Sale, Max Scherzer to 200 at bats a year. What's that? 600 pitches. I mean, a lot of bad things can. To me, you don't want your, you don't want your franchise pitcher being exposed to the potential. He's not going to. So I think that, yeah, they'll hit him this year. Pujols down a couple times, but I don't think he's going to be a player hitter, a hitter pitcher for much more than this season.
Yeah, well, that's kind of my programming partner, my brother, that owns that company with me. He's like, it's literally going to take 4 months of nothing but programming in a way for people to both hit and pitch and score sheet. And if I spend 4 months doing it and then he never really does both, I'm going to be unhappy. Is how he put it.
Right, but if he bats 600 times and gets 40 homers, there's going to be a clamor to have him. So I think it's a smart move. And our friend Greg Ambrosius, the NFPC, is doing the same thing. He's making it pitcher only, and I think that's smart too. And
he's got we play simulated games, so we have the problem of a guy coming into a game pinch hitting for someone after he pitched for 4 innings and got taken out, or even starting in a lineup both as a pitcher and a hitter. I mean, there's just all these little things we'd have to do, so it's not a joke. Greg runs the traditional point-adding game, and even he's realizing that it's because none of us wrote our programs with the idea that somebody would both hit and pitch.
Right.
And then, are we going to suddenly make all pitchers count their batting stats? If you got a pitcher that goes 0 for 40 and we're making him count, you're going to be pretty unhappy.
Yeah, no, this is something that's been, as you can guess, has been talked about. I've written some pieces about it on Masters Ball. I mean, what I actually did was I kind of, as my some people told me, I tried to break the internet. The rule in rotisserie that when you weren't in MLB last year, you're only eligible at the position you played the most. Well, last year Otani played the most at DH, so I kind of tongue in cheek said he shouldn't even be eligible at pitcher. So then I wrote a piece right after and said, "Oh, duh, let's not be an idiot here. It's letter of the law maybe, but spirit of the rules. Let's let the guy pitch. But still, that's just the point. There's just so. And the other thing too. I mean, I've talked to many game operators. It is not as simple. I'll just change this to an equal sign, and it's a ton of programming, and people don't really understand. We can put a guy in the moon, but you can't make Otani do this. It's a lot more complicated than people think it is.
No.
Actually, we're pretty old now. Is putting a man in the moon still the analogy? I mean, that happened happened almost 50 years ago at this point. I got to think of another analogy.
Yeah, no, and like I said, these are in stat adding games. So yeah, for our simulation where we have all these, we have all this stuff written in, so things like that don't happen by accident. So yeah, it would be a nightmare. Plus, but you do think he's going to do well when he pitch. I mean, I agree. I think he's going to be a much better pitcher than hitter unless he has a shoulder injury or something. And then if he literally gets shut down as a pitcher and does nothing but hit, we might do the common sense thing of say, okay, you can't use him as a pitcher anymore, but you use him as a hitter the rest of the year because he's not going to pitch another inning. Um, common sense helps. Like last year, Elias or MLB or somebody was giving Rizzo games played at second for the once in a great while where he'd line up as a second baseman for a sac bunt or something.
Well, what happened there? He literally shifted gloves.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word shift because he
Yeah,
literally
switched.
switched gloves.
Yeah.
So how come Josh Donaldson isn't a second baseman when Toronto goes into the shift? Well, they kept the same glove. So it's just one of those really quirky rules. And if this is rotisserie and you were asking me, I would suggest that you change the rule from games appeared to games started, and he never starts the game that way. So
Right.
you set your rotisserie eligibility via games started, not via games appeared. And Rizzo's no longer a second baseman.
Yeah, we just sent out the common sense letter because we use games played, 10 games played, you qualify. We just sent out the common sense letter and said, look, Anthony Rizzo is not going to qualify at second baseman this year or next year or any year until he actually starts playing second. But you're right, if we have to, we'll change it to games started because, common sense has to rule. Well, let's see, to try to help out people if they listen this through our podcast, do you have a couple kind of surprise guys you're going to target this year that, without giving away all your secrets, but...
Well, once I start writing fantasy analyst on my tax report, tax forms, then secrets are out the window. Yeah, I'm trying to think a couple guys that sort of transcend from both roto and score sheet. And you mentioned before about steals. You don't want to go totally for a steals guy, but and he's getting some industry buzz lately. But I like Manny Margot of San Diego, and I think that he's going to be a pretty decent score sheet player. I think the power will be there. He's not a great OBP guy, but he plays good. Defense matters in the score sheet. I don't know. We can argue if it matters enough or whatever. It matters, and as opposed to roto. So I do like him from that aspect. So Manny Margot is for an NL only sort of league. I think he's going to play a lot, and his sort of counterpart in the American League, maybe a little more speed than power, but kind of similar as Bradley Zimmer. So I think that again the steals are nice, but they're not integral to score sheet. But I do think Zimmer's going to play a lot, and if you have to platoon him, you can platoon him. So those are a couple of outfielders that probably aren't going to be kept, but could be available if you want to keep a pitcher instead and still pick up a good outfielder. I kind of like those two. I got some. You want some deeper names?
Sure. I mean, everybody knows who Josh Donaldson is, so might as well talk about the deeper names that maybe. I mean, that's how you win in fantasy, right? Is you stay healthy, but also you draft a guy in round 18 that actually goes on to have a true, decent, way above replacement year.
Right. So you mentioned in score sheet that you don't worry about wins. We kind of alluded to the fact you don't have to worry about saves. You don't really care about runs and RBIs, right? You care about the slash line.
You care about, for hitters, it's on base and slugging, and for pitchers, it's ERA. Those are the big stats.
So this is a deep name, and he's not going to start. I don't think he is, but he may by the end of the season. Garrett Cooper of the Miami Marlins. He came over from the Yankees. Guy can hit, and Miami just may have no choice. Who are they going to play? He can dabble. He's a first baseman. Okay, they got Justin Bour, but he also can play the corner outfield, and he's actually played some third base too, which tells me he's athletic enough to play the outfield. So if you're looking for a dart throw at the end, Garrett Cooper is someone that I would, the guy can hit. He's a score sheet sort of hitter with OBP and power. So he's a name to keep in National League leagues or very deep, both leagues. And Nicky Delmonico is my guy in Chicago, the White Sox. Towards the end of the season, really showed his wares. Again, the White Sox don't have a lot. They're going to take a look at some guys. So Delmonico is a guy that I'm going to look at, and again, maybe platoon, maybe as a late outfielder, kind of a dart throw to see if he plays more. But those are the two guys for hitters that I, Margot Cooper in the NL, Zimmer, Delmonico. I didn't realize they're both outfielders, but that might be better, or they're all outfielders, because, like I said, you usually keep infielders, and you try to piece together your outfield. So, and then we mentioned pitching. You don't need Craig Kimbrell. You could use a good closer or a good reliever as a closer. The American League guy to keep your eye on for is Nick Goody of the Indians. With Shaw gone, again, doesn't matter where he throws his good ERA. If it's a seventh inning, eighth or ninth inning, you don't care. You just want good ERA. But the point being, Goody is probably going to get move up into Shaw's setup role behind Miller and then behind Chad Allen or Cody Allen. So Nick Goody, and then the NL version again. I don't care about wins and anything else out of my reliever, but another Miami guy, Steckenrider, Drew Steckenrider, is another cheap reliever that you could put a closer, and no one's going to be targeting Drew Steckenrider in their draft, but he's going to be a solid reliever. And again, who cares if it's Miami? Who cares if he's 1-7? He's going to have good ratios.
Right. And the other thing about score sheet is, in Roto, the guys that don't get saves or enough innings to get a lot of strikeouts don't really matter at all. But, in score sheet, now that starters don't ever pitch 7, 8, 9 innings anymore,
right?
Just like the majors, you have to have a guy that pitches the 7th and 8th inning, because you might have Kimbrel, but if your starter leaves the game in the 6th and you give up 5 runs in the 7th and 8th inning, it doesn't matter if you have Kimbrel or not, you're losing the game. So drafting those guys, Andrew Miller is just as valuable in score sheet as he is to the Indians, because you got to get guys out in the 7th and 8th inning, and those guys that get 70 innings, starters, they lead the league now with 205 innings. So 70, 75 innings, 2 of those guys combined, they get as many innings as 80% of the starters do.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. It's people ask me, how do I draft a score sheet team? I literally tell them, draft it like you were drafting a real team. Whatever. If you were drafting, draft the players you were drafting a real team. It's kind of one of the fun things about it. It's Roto has completely different mindset. This is how I would draft and how I would manage. Listen, obviously the diehard score sheet players, there are so many nuances that that even I don't know.
Yeah. That
make them really, 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 really good players. But still, the basic, and that has to do with the managing and the hook and all that other kind of thing. But as far as the foundation of your team, a lot of it is how would you build a real baseball team? I think that's kind of cool, because I think that's what we play Roto because it's fun or whatever. But I think all of us would like to be a general manager, and this is as close as it gets.
Well, that's what, we've done this 31 years now. People are like, right. Well, I'd like to play score sheet, but I'm sure it'll take too much time. And what I tell them as an honest statement, not as a marketing thing, is that in a lot of ways it takes less time, because you don't have to learn the in and outs of a special rule about a steals category. You just sit down and you pretend you're the GM of the Philadelphia Phillies, and you pick players. And if you know baseball players and you can put a good team together, you're going to put a good score sheet team together. So in that sense, especially if you've never played fantasy before, I think it could be even easier than a rotisserie game.
Oh, it absolutely is. The key, and I'm guilty of, you mentioned time before, and I'm guilty of this, and I know you send out your warnings, but there's always that Monday game that catches me off guard, and I don't get my switches in there in time. And I know you have built-in precautions so that you're not completely messed up if you happen to miss a week's worth of moves. But that's my biggest thing is, and this is same way in rotisserie too. These early switches, but sometimes you get So I'm more apt to forget about a deadline than I am to not put my effort into it. If you know what I mean. So and I know that we get the email from you. It says don't forget this week it's Patriots Day game in Boston. The Sox are playing at 11 o'clock. Get your changes in before then. At 12:30 comes around. Oh, guess what I forgot? Yeah, no, it's good to do things a day early. Of course, I'm guilty of that. Changing tires. Well, so once again, this is Todd, and we'll put this address up in print, but themastersball.com, they have some free content. They have various levels of subscription service. Judging by Todd getting the Fantasy Baseball Writer of the Year award, you can be pretty sure the writing is really good. And like I said, it's a fantasy baseball rotisserie advice site where the owner plays score sheet and can give you score sheet advice. Todd, like always, it's been great talking to you, and hopefully we'll do this again maybe in 4 weeks and discuss some current spring training news. Yeah, let's let's talk when JD Martinez signs. You guys are as anxious as we are.
It's
You
just,
know,
it's
it's
incredible
just
how many. I
nuts.
mean, Hosmer. There's an entire. You could form a
Yeah,
Series champion team out of the guys that are still not signed.
yeah. You have to have Scott Boras be the manager, but sure.
Yeah, no, but it's yeah. Martinez, Hosmer. It's just incredible, though. I mean, yeah, it'd just be nice to have some signings to talk about, huh?
Yeah, well, you know what? It's probably going to happen soon, and all the posturing that's going on. These guys, they're still people. They still have families. They have to move their entire family to a new area. Everything else. So, I know the word out. Martinez is getting frustrated with Boston's lack of movement. How many years have you heard this team made a mistake by bidding against themselves?
Yeah.
So now this team isn't bidding against themselves, and now the players all upset. So I think we got a couple. We've got a couple guys to sign. I think the floodgates will open soon enough, and I think by the time spring training starts, that these guys will have homes, and there won't be a boycott and all that other goofy stuff. And baseball, as we know it, will be just fine.
Oh yeah, and if a few of these guys have to play baseball for a paltry 16 million a year instead of 21 million a year, I don't think any of us are going to cry in sympathy for them.
Nope. All good.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Todd. It's been great talking to you.
You too, Jeff, and let's make sure it's not another 3 years.
Yeah. No, definitely not. All right. Thanks.